It's just Friday after school and I'm still here making this video for you. How are you all doing? I hope you're doing well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going in that outline that I'm going to post for you. That starts, it's chapter, it's a section about the actual fighting. So it starts with America fighting in Europe and North Africa. I'm going to talk about those battles very quickly, and then I'm going to go into the fighting in the South Pacific, and then kind of how the war is ended with the Yalta Conference and stuff. So there's 3 chunks. They skip around a little bit, but I will talk you through, all right? So throughout the entire war, we have the Battle of the Atlantic, and that's really still the same German U-boats fighting against us there. And we are going to push them out eventually. We do lots of code cracking with that. And if you guys have seen the movie Imitation Game, if you haven't, I really recommend it with Benedict Cumberbatch. It shows how these intelligence agencies are trying to work on cracking these codes to get these U-boats out that are taking out so many naval vessels of the British and ours and everybody else. Battle of Stalingrad is going to be between Hitler and, of course, Stalin. You know, real humble guy, names a city after him. That's what we're dealing with here with Stalin. And we know that Hitler's going to attack Russia, and it doesn't work. Russia's too big and cold, same old. And we know that because of this, Stalin is going to join the Allied forces. And there's a saying, war makes strange bedfellows. Here we are, terrified of the Red Scare, and now we are allies with Stalin, right? Who we know is going to be a totalitarian dictator. The loss of life for both the Germans and the Russians in this is just monumental. It is enormous. The first place America actually starts to fight is in North Africa. We are going to fight in what's known as Operation Torch. A young Dwight D. Eisenhower, who's going to be president later because of what he does here, starts this out. And we take on a very interesting guy whose name was Erwin Rommel. And Erwin Rommel, there's been all different stories and movies about him. He was actually someone who did what he did to help Germany, but thought what Hitler was doing was wrong. And I know that sounds very simplified, but Erwin Rommel is often sometimes called a good German. And he was a wonderful soldier as far as being tactically aware and understanding everything. And he got the nickname the Desert Fox. It was so difficult to try and find him and fight against him in North Africa. And even Eisenhower said, like, this is a very tough foe. I respect him. And it's very sad. Erwin Rommel later is going to try and assassinate Hitler, and when he does, he is not going to succeed. Someone rats him out at the last minute, and Erwin Rommel is told that either his entire family is going to get killed, or he will be staged as a war hero, get a parade, everything, and killed, but his family will be taken care of. So he takes his own life to save his family, and Hitler has this huge parade because Erwin Rommel was beloved by the German people, and it doesn't come out until after the war that Hitler actually forced him to be killed. So again, we're dealing with very sick, very intensely insecure, unstable people here, and it's going to be actually Stalin who orders Hitler's body to be dug up like 5 times after the war to make sure that he's truly dead. Something that all these totalitarian leaders have in common is this intense insecurity. So we do defeat Rommel's forces, and then once we're in Africa, then we are a hop, skip, and a jump to Italy, right? So now we can come in from Italy from the bottom. So we start in Sicily, and we are going to move up, and we're going to do a lot of our fighting there. Very soon after we start, Churchill and FDR are going to have these radio broadcasts through Italy, and they're going to say, would you like to live for Italy and civilization or die for Mussolini and Hitler? And it's actually Mussolini's own people that turn him in and kill him. And the Germans still have to, fight against us in Italy, even though we got rid of the Italians with that deal. And this is where the Tuskegee Airmen are going to come in handy. They are going to be quite amazing and very, very brave. And this is an all-black aircraft regiment. And Italy is going to be taken by the Allies eventually, with many lives, with many costs. And then there's D-Day, right? D-Day, this invasion of France. So we have France just completely filled up by the German soldiers. So how do we get there? Do we attack at a coast? And the idea becomes we do all of that. We are going to literally drop down, and this was under the direction of Eisenhower and General Omar Bradley, who becomes really famous. And 3.5 million Allied troops are going to be dropped down in these beaches that later on are going to be Omaha Beach, etc. And this is just so intense, so scary. Imagine you're like an 18-year-old kid from Boston or from Kansas or from Los Angeles, and now you have a parachute strapped to your back, and you are literally being dropped down into enemy territory. And you know the Germans are there. The Germans also are shooting at you as you come. And then there's the guys who are coming off the boats, and of course you don't want to be one of the first guys. They were dropped down. There's actually going to be foldable bicycles that people wore as backpacks because you had to find each other once you drop down. We are talking such excruciating bravery. The chaos, the confusion, the death toll, it is intense. The costs are really high. 10,000 Allied casualties, 7,000 of them just American. That's why when you have all of these cemeteries and all of these monuments and Omaha Beach named after the people, the regiments they came, it's really to thank those Americans because it was mostly us at D-Day. This was ours. And now you have this front just ripped open as it is. Now we can go into France. Now we can attack Hitler. And basically we keep pushing Hitler back towards Germany. That's going to be a big part of the Battle of the Bulge. Just brutal. Fought with General Patton, and that's how we continue to go through there, even though it's in the worst of the winter time. It's really tough. So those are the European battles. You and I will talk about that a little bit more in class, and we'll look at some footage of D-Day and stuff like that, at least through film. And then the war in the Pacific is very different. The war in the Pacific is going to be what we call island hopping. So we use our Navy, use our aircraft, then finally get close to an island, then actually attack the island, then set up camp there, and then get, secure again to where we can go and fight and get another island. And the whole idea is we want to get closer and closer eventually to Japan. But the thing is, this is going to be a huge, huge loss of life every single time we do this. The Japanese do not surrender. There was one time during World War II on record that they surrender. So they are more willing to have their men die than to have any kind of surrender. So this just becomes just so bloody, such a loss of life. And this is where you have Harry Truman start to think about, well, what about the atomic bomb? I'm not saying it is proper that he thinks this, but this is where he starts to get his idea because his island hopping is taking so very long. So the Battle of the Pacific really starts with the invasion of the Philippines. And General MacArthur is going to be there. And MacArthur is going to eventually have to leave the island. We are outnumbered. The Japanese come in, and for those who are left behind, basically hell awaits for them. If you guys have seen or read Unbroken, this is the story of Unbroken. First, these people have the Bataan Death March, where they are like run over with cars, not given water, routinely stabbed with bayonets. It was terrible. And then you are in these prison camps, and in these prison camps, 50 men per day are going to die from lack of food and water. It is absolutely terrible. And that Bataan Death March is going to be so infamous because of that. Battle of Coral Sea, you have us continue to have these small victories. We firebomb Tokyo, like we heard about in the song. Battle of Midway, hence the name. It is going to be the turning point in the Pacific. This is where we finally win. We finally win here, and again, we're taking on kamikaze soldiers. We're taking on someone who doesn't have a fear of death, and this is very terrifying. This is very scary, but we are going to win here. This was a huge victory, and unlike the other fighting, unlike the fighting in Europe where we're fighting with a mixture of British troops and other troops, the fighting in the Pacific is just us. It is just the United States. It is just our men. So when we have a victory like Midway, this is everything for us, right? This is huge. And the Battle of Guadalcanal, we continue, and again, we're just getting closer and closer. Lady Gulf, same thing. We're going to talk about how Lady Gulf is when MacArthur takes back the Philippines, and then Iwo Jima. I'm sure you guys have seen the very famous picture of the men standing on that rocky outcrop holding the flag. And again, every single time we're doing this, we are bitterly losing so many men. I had a great uncle who someone saw his hand moving underneath a pile of rubble and bodies and pulled him out from Okinawa. These battles are tough. These battles are very, very tough, and we are losing so many men each time. Okinawa, again, this is where we really start to think. Okinawa itself, 11,000 Americans are killed, and 80,000 Japanese, and 80,000 dead. They still did not surrender. They still did not surrender. So how do we fight a foe that has no fear of death, that's never surrendering? And again, this is where Harry Truman starts to open up with this idea of the atomic bomb. So you and I are going to talk about the atomic bomb in class on Monday. And when we do, we're going to talk about how that really ends the war in the Pacific. But ending the war in Europe is really going to be us getting closer and closer to Germany through the Battle of the Bulge. So we're switching back to that part where it says World War II ends, okay? And the Yalta Conference is the big three. So the big three are Churchill, FDR, and Stalin. You got it. And they're planning for how this war is going to end. It's 1945 in February. It's not over yet. We're thinking, how will this go? And they decide 3 measures, and keep in mind Russia's going to follow like none of these. One of the measures is that Stalin will help us in the South Pacific. Never happens. The other measure is that Stalin will hold free democratic elections in those Eastern European countries that Germany formerly had occupied. That never happens. And then the last one says that Germany will be divided into those 4 chunks. 1 chunk belonging to the USSR, 1 chunk to France, 1 chunk to us, 1 chunk to Britain. That does happen, but of course we know where that's going with all the Berlin Wall and everything down the road, right? So increasingly lots of tension between us and between the USSR. And we even toy with the idea, should we attack Russia? Should we like get Russia out of the way? But there's already been such a loss of life, so we do not do that. But soon Germany is all but conquered. FDR is going to die April 12th. He dies a few months into his 4th term. 4 terms. Again, this is just nuts. This guy serves 4 terms. And then you have Hitler die days afterwards, April 30th. And like a pin in a balloon, that's it for the Nazis. That's it for the Third Reich. Now that he is dead, Germany surrenders. And that is Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day. May 8th of 1945. So you and I are going to talk about how VJ Day happens. And now we're fast forwarding just a little bit more, looking at after the war. So where it says post-war, there's now a lot of work to do. After VJ Day, the stuff we're going to talk about on Monday, what do we do with Europe? What do we do with the world, right? What do we do with all these colonies that belong to these European nations? And it's going to be tough to figure that out. One of the biggest things we do, we don't mess it up this time, we put together the UN. This is the League of Nations that, could have been. This is established June 1945, collective peace, security, so this never happens again. And so far, it's working, right? Potsdam Conference is a meeting between Truman and Stalin. And these two get together, and it is not friendly. It is not a fun little catch-up. There is clearly lots of tension. They're not agreeing on anything. Truman's checking in. How about those elections? Never happened. Oh, thanks for helping us in the South Pacific. Yeah, you never did. So you could tell how this is going. They're not getting along, and tensions are rising. So once again, if we recap the causes of this war, World War I, Europe's history of conflict, the failed Treaty of Versailles. Once Hitler started, that appeasement and isolationism, both on behalf of Europe and us, that didn't help, and that German and Japanese aggression, right? The attacking and the moving forward, the truly thinking they were the divine race on earth, better than everybody else, so deserved to take over. The effects of World War II. We see the occupation of Japan, occupation of all these different parts of Europe by the Allies. And you and I will talk more about how that evolves, what that turns into. The creation of the UN, our increased tension with the Soviet Union, just escalating. And then the big one. I'm not just saying it because I'm your American history teacher. The United States does emerge from this war the #1 world power. We are going to be #1. Part of it is because we came in late. A big part of it is our economy and what happened and how it blew up during the war and how big it was. A big part of it is our population, our military power, and 2, none of the fighting happened in the United States, right? So we are #1 now on the block. #2 right below us is the USSR. You know how that's going to go. They want to knock us off. So I hope you have a ridiculously amazing weekend. I hope that it's really fun. I hope you get outside. I hope that you have less drama than what I just talked about in this video. And take care.
Beautiful, wonderful, perfect, all American.